As you begin to relax and prepare for sleep, imagine the setting sun glowing amber over the banks of the Euphrates River. You are floating above the land we now call Iraq, where the Tigris and Euphrates converge like twin lifelines winding through the cradle of civilization. This region, known as Mesopotamia, meaning between the rivers, was home to some of the earliest human societies. Among them rose Babylon, a city destined to shape the course of law, literature, astronomy, and imperial rule. The Babylonian Empire was not a single, continuous reign, but a story of rise and fall, of revival and reinvention. It spans thousands of years, woven through the threads of empires and dynasties. From its roots in the ancient Sumerian and Akkadian traditions, Babylon would come to symbolize both grandeur and fragility, majesty and mortality. Its name, in later ages, would evoke both awe and mystery. In this quiet journey through time, we will begin with the dawn of Mesopotamian civilization, exploring how early city-states laid the groundwork for Babylon's emergence. We will then meet Hammurabi, the famed king whose code of laws became a model for legal thinking across ages. We will walk slowly through the streets of Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar II, where the mythical hanging gardens are said to have bloomed in the dry heat. We'll observe daily life, religion, politics, warfare, and knowledge. And we will drift through the decline of Babylon, eventually absorbed into the vast empires of Persia and beyond. Each chapter will invite you deeper into this world, not just through kings and conquests, but through the intimate rhythms of daily life. What did the Babylonians eat? What gods did they worship? What stories did they tell their children? What did the stars mean to them? And how did they measure time? You'll hear about clay tablets filled with cuneiform signs, deciphered by modern archaeologists after centuries buried in the sands. We'll visit towering ziggurats, great stepped temples dedicated to the gods, and hear the soft chant of priests reciting ancient hymns in the glow of oil lamps. We'll look upon their art, their engineering, their law code, seek a reflection of a people striving to bring order to chaos in a world shaped by rivers, floods, droughts, and the rhythms of the cosmos. And through it all, you'll be gently lulled by the passing centuries, moving smoothly from the Sumerians to the Akkadians, through old Babylon, and into the splendor and final days of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Our narrative will be steady, calm, and richly textured, designed not to overwhelm, but to soothe, educate, and slowly carry you into a restful sleep. As you drift deeper into relaxation, let this story surround you like a soft blanket of time. Picture the reeds swaying by the riverbanks, the scent of incense in temple courtyards, the rustle of papyrus scrolls, and the quiet murmur of scribes. Let go of your modern world for a while and allow your mind to sink into the ancient soil of Mesopotamia. This is not merely history. It is a journey through memory, myth, and meaning, a chance to feel the gentle pulse of an empire that dreamed in stone and spoke in stars. So now, with your breathing slow and even, and your eyes gently closing, let us begin this voyage together. Our first chapter awaits, beginning with the origins of Mesopotamian civilization and the rise of the city that would one day be called Babylon. Close your eyes, listen closely, and sleep softly. The story begins. Before the rise of Babylon, before Hammurabi's laws or Nebuchadnezzar's towering gates, the land between the rivers already teemed with life, ideas, and the stirrings of what we now call civilization. Our journey must begin there, in the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, long before Babylon carved its name into history. Picture the landscape of southern Mesopotamia in the 4th millennium BCE. A vast alluvial plain stretches out beneath a golden sun. Two mighty rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates snake, their way through the region, carrying the snowmelt from distant Anatolian mountains to the parched plains below. Every year, the rivers overflow their banks, leaving behind rich silt perfect for agriculture. But these rivers are as unpredictable as they are generous. Floods come without warning. Droughts strike with cruel regularity. It is a land of extremes, and it is in this tension between abundance and uncertainty that civilization begins to form. The earliest known inhabitants of this region were the Sumerians. They were not a unified people, but rather a constellation of city-states, each one, an independent urban center with its own deity, temple, and ruler. Uruk, Eridu, Ur, Lagash, and Nippur names that echo through time like the soft tolling of ancient bells. Uruk, in particular, was a marvel. By 3200 BCE, it may have housed over 40,000 people, an enormous population for its time. Its center was dominated by a ziggurat, a stepped temple platform that reached toward the heavens. Atop the ziggurat stood the shrine to Inanna, goddess of love and war. Around it sprawled mud-brick homes, workshops, and canals. Life in Sumer was organized and complex. Farmers grew barley and wheat using sophisticated irrigation systems. Merchants traded in lapis lazuli, copper and timber with faraway lands like Dilmun and the Indus Valley. Artisans crafted delicate jewelry and cylinder seal steiny stone rollers etched with intricate designs that left unique impressions in clay. But perhaps the most revolutionary Sumerian invention was writing. Around 3200 BCE, scribes in Uruk began marking clay tablets with wedge-shaped symbols using a stylus made of reed. This system, known as cuneiform from the Latin cuneus, meaning wedge, was originally used for record-keeping, grain rations, livestock tallies, temple donations, but it quickly evolved into something more. By 2500 BCE, cuneiform was used to write myths, hymns, letters, and even the world's first known literary masterpiece, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This poem, carved into tablets, tells the story of a Sumerian king's quest for immortality. It speaks of gods, monsters, friendship, grief, and the inevitability of death. In its lines, we glimpse the inner world of ancient people not so different from our own. But while Sumer was flourishing, another culture was rising to the north, the Akkadians. Semitic in language and culture, the Akkadians lived in the region around the city of Akkad, though its precise location remains unknown. In the 24th century BCE, a brilliant and ambitious man named Sargon of Akkad changed everything. Sargon was a cupbearer to the king of Kishan, important Sumerian city. Through force, charisma, and strategy, he overthrew his master and forged what many historians consider the world's first empire. The Akkadian Empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. Sargon styled himself king of the four quarters of the world. He did not simply conquer, he unified. He appointed governors, standardized weights and measures, and encouraged trade and infrastructure. He also adopted cuneiform to write the Akkadian language, linking two cultures through a shared system of communication. Under his rule, and that of his grandson Naram-Sin, Mesopotamia entered a golden age of imperial administration and artistic brilliance. But empires rise and empires fall. By around 2150 BCE, internal revolts, invasions by mountain peoples known as the Gutians, and environmental stress led to the collapse of Akkadian control. The Gutians, while disruptive, left little cultural imprint, and within a century, native Mesopotamian rule was restored, most notably in the city of Ur, which ushered in the third dynasty of Ur. This period, from around 2100 to 2000 BCE, is sometimes called the Neo-Sumerian Renaissance. The kings of Ur, especially Ur-Nammu, revived monumental architecture, law codes, and bureaucratic control. They restored temples, regulated agriculture, and developed a centralized economy. The Code of Ur-Nammu, predating Hammurabi's by centuries, is among the earliest known legal texts establishing fines for injury, theft, and adultery, but the world was changing once again. Around 2000 BCE, a wave of migrations and upheavals swept through the Near East. Amorite tribes from the west began to infiltrate Mesopotamia, settling in cities, adopting local customs, and slowly integrating into society. Among these cities was a modest settlement on the Euphrates, with a name that would soon resound through history: Babylon. At this time, Babylon was just one of many small Amorite-ruled city-states. Its early rulers, like Sumuel and Sabium, left few records and ruled without fanfare. But it had a strategic location nestled between key trade routes and fertile lands, and a city wall that enclosed it like a protective embrace. By the early 18th century BCE, a new king came to Babylon's throne. His name was Hammurabi, and under his leadership, Babylon would transform from a provincial city into the beating heart of an empire. But before we meet Hammurabi, let us pause to reflect on the long foundations upon which his kingdom would rise. Babylon was not born in isolation. It emerged from centuries of experimentation, adaptation, and resilience. The Sumerians gave the region its writing, religion, and city planning. The Akkadians brought unity and imperial ambition. The kings of Ur laid down laws and administration. Even the invaders, like the Amorites, brought fresh energy and perspective. All these elements flowed together like tributaries joining a great river, and from their confluence, Babylon would rise. As we move into the next chapter, let us imagine the young Hammurabi standing atop the city walls, gazing out over the Euphrates. He knows that the land is fractured, city-states squabble, alliances shift like sand, enemies press from all sides. But within him is a vision, a dream of order, of strength, of justice written in stone. Close your eyes and drift deeper into the past, for now the city awakens, and the story of Babylon truly begins. The year is around 1792 BCE. A young king named Hammurabi ascends the throne of Babylon. At first glance, there is little to suggest that his reign will be anything extraordinary. Babylon, though strategically placed, is still a relatively minor city. It stands in the shadow of more powerful rivals: Larsa to the south, Eshnunna to the east, Assur to the north, and the mighty Elamite kingdom lurking just beyond the Zagros Mountains. But Hammurabi is no ordinary king. Patient, deliberate, and visionary, he sees a fractured land ripe for unification, not through brute force alone, but through diplomacy, alliance building, and when the time is right, conquest. To understand Hammurabi's genius, we must first imagine Babylon at the dawn of his rule. The city's heart beats along the Euphrates River. Clay brick houses line narrow streets. Canals wind through neighborhoods like watery veins. At the city's center stands the great temple of Marduk, Babylon's patron god. Marduk, though not yet the chief deity of Mesopotamia, is rising in stature just as Babylon itself is rising. Hammurabi strengthens Babylon's infrastructure. He reinforces the city's defenses and expands its irrigation systems. He fosters trade and encourages religious devotion. His early rule is peaceful, but he watches his neighbors closely. At first, Hammurabi maintains friendly relations with other kings. He signs pacts, dispatches envoys, and plays the role of the wise and cooperative ruler. But as the political landscape shifts, he seizes opportunities with precision. Over the course of his reign, Hammurabi wages a series of brilliant military campaigns. One by one, he defeats his rivals. He conquers Larsa in the south, taking control of vital canals and farmland. He moves northward, defeating Eshnunna and repelling Elamite influence. He brings Assyria under his sway. By the end of his reign, Hammurabi rules nearly all of Mesopotamia. For the first time in centuries, the land between the rivers is united under a single authority. Yet Hammurabi's most enduring legacy is not his military conquests, but his laws. Around 1754 BCE, Hammurabi orders the creation of a grand legal code. The laws are inscribed on a tall black stone stele nearly 8 feet high. At the top, the king is depicted receiving the laws from Shamash, the sun god and god of justice. Beneath this divine scene are over 280 legal provisions, written in cuneiform Akkadian. This is the Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest and most complete legal codes in history. The code addresses a vast range of issues: theft, assault, debt, marriage, divorce, inheritance, agriculture, trade, and even the fees of doctors and builders. It reflects a highly stratified society. Penalties vary depending on whether the accused is a noble, a commoner, or a slave. The famous principle of lex talionis, or an eye for an eye, appears frequently, though it is often applied unequally. Yet beneath the harshness, the code reveals a deep concern with order, stability, and accountability. It seeks to protect the weak from exploitation, to standardize justice across the realm, and to reinforce the king's role as shepherd of his people. In a world where writing was sacred and few could read, the public display of these laws symbolized transparency and divine order. Imagine standing in a Babylonian marketplace. Merchants trade barley for silver under the watchful eyes of city officials. A dispute arises over a debt. The scribe is summoned. He recites the law from memory or consults a clay tablet. Justice, swift and sanctioned, restores the balance. The Babylonian state under Hammurabi is a marvel of coordination. Provinces are governed by appointed officials loyal to the king. Taxes are collected in grain, livestock, and labor. Temples function as both religious centers and economic hubs. Priests oversee rituals, but also manage land, warehouses, and schools. The military, well-trained and disciplined, defends the empire's borders and quells internal unrest. Hammurabi also emphasizes religious unity. Marduk is elevated as chief deity, and temples to him are constructed across the empire. Myths are rewritten to place Marduk at the center of creation. This religious consolidation is not merely spiritual, it reinforces Babylon's political dominance. Yet Hammurabi is not just a ruler or a reformer. He is a symbol, a manifestation of Mesopotamian ideals about kingship. He embodies justice, piety, strength, and wisdom. His reign becomes a benchmark, echoed by later kings who invoke his name to legitimize their rule. When Hammurabi dies around 1750 BCE, he leaves behind a vast and integrated empire. But holding such an empire together proves challenging. His successors struggle to maintain control. Regional governors grow ambitious. External enemies, sensing weakness, begin to press the borders. Within a generation, the Babylonian Empire begins to fragment. The south rises in revolt. The Kassites, a mysterious mountain people from the east, begin to make inroads. The once glorious realm begins to recede, like the waters of a drying canal. And yet, Hammurabi's legacy endures. His code is copied and studied for centuries. His name is remembered not only in Mesopotamia, but in later cultures that regard him as the archetype of a just ruler. Even today, his laws are taught in classrooms, his stele preserved in the Louvre, his name spoken as one of the fathers of civilization. As we drift toward the next chapter, let us imagine the city he built at its peaks, sunlight shimmering on the river, the clatter of carts and sandals on brick roads, the scent of baked bread and incense, the murmur of scribes and priests. Babylon, still young but proud, rises like a beacon in the fertile plain, and Hammurabi, ever watchful, gazes down from his palace balcony, his laws set in stone, his name etched into eternity. Sleep now, and let your thoughts wander gently along the Euphrates as we move toward the next era of Babylon's long and storied life. As we drift gently past the golden age of Hammurabi, the bright glow of unity and strength begins to dim. Like a lantern flickering in the wind, the mighty Babylonian Empire, so carefully built by a visionary king, starts to falter in the hands of those who come after him. Hammurabi's son, Samsu-Iluna, inherits the throne around 1750 BCE. He is a capable ruler, but the world he faces is not the one his father mastered. Revolts erupt in the south. The city-states of Sumer, long held under Babylonian authority, begin to assert their independence. Larsa and rebel. Simultaneously, external threats press in-raiders from the west and east sense opportunity in Babylon's weakening grip. The empire, once integrated and firm, begins to unravel. Samsu-Iluna tries to suppress these revolts, but despite some military successes, he struggles to maintain the unity that Hammurabi achieved. Over time, local rulers gain power, taxes become difficult to collect, and communication across the empire grows more strained. The complex bureaucracy that once held the Babylonian state together begins to crumble. It is in this vulnerable state that a new force emerges, the Kassites. The Kassites were a people from the Zagros Mountains to the northeast of Mesopotamia. They spoke a language unrelated to Akkadian or Sumerian, and little is known about their origins. They do not appear suddenly, but gradually, first as mercenaries, then as settlers, then as rulers. They are both foreign and adaptive. Over generations, they absorb Babylonian customs, language, and religion, becoming in time almost indistinguishable from native rulers. But before the Kassites can fully take the reins, Babylon suffers a devastating blow. In the 1590s BCE, an army from the highland kingdom of Elam, located in what is now southwestern Iran, invades Babylon. Led by King Kutir-Nahunte, the Elamites sack the city, destroy temples, and carry away the revered statue of Marduk, very symbol of Babylon's divine protection. This act is more than military conquest. It is spiritual humiliation. The heart of the Babylonian world has been desecrated. The first Babylonian dynasty, begun by Amorites and brought to glory by Hammurabi, now comes to an end. But Babylon does not disappear. In time, the Elamites retreat, and a power vacuum remains. Over the next several decades, the Kassites consolidate control. By around 1530 BCE, they establish a new dynasty that will rule Babylon for more than 4 centuries, longer than any other. We now enter the Kassite period, a chapter of resilience and quiet endurance. Though often overshadowed by more dramatic eras, this time was one of surprising stability and cultural integration. The Kassite kings take Babylon's traditions seriously. They restore temples, especially the great shrine of Esagila, the temple of Marduk. They rebuild the Ziggurat Etemenanki, said to have inspired the later biblical image of the Tower of Babel. They re-establish religious festivals, restore the statue of Marduk, and present themselves as rightful heirs of Hammurabi. One of their most prominent rulers, Kurigalzu I, founds a new capital, Dur-Kurigalzu, near modern-day Baghdad. The city includes palaces, temples, and administrative centers. The Kassites also develop new forms of art using glass and faience, and introduce the horse-drawn chariot to Babylonian warfare. Kassite rule is marked not by expansion, but by diplomatic sophistication. The Kassites engage in correspondence with the great powers of the time: Egypt, the Hittite Empire, Assyria, and the Mitanni. These letters, preserved in the Amarna archives found in Egypt, show Babylon as part of an international community of elite monarchs who exchange gifts, brides, and messages of mutual respect. Picture, for a moment, a Kassite envoy arriving at the court of Pharaoh Akhenaten. The Babylonian ambassador brings fine wool, lapis lazuli, and spice tokens of goodwill from one great power to another. In return, he carries home Egyptian gold, rare animals, and perhaps a princess destined to marry a Kassite king. These exchanges are not merely ceremonial. They stabilize borders, prevent wars, and foster shared cultural values across distant empires. Daily life under the Kassites is, in many ways, a continuation of earlier traditions. Farmers still work the irrigated fields, Scribes still press cuneiform into clay, priests chant hymns in ancient temples, merchants still follow caravan routes that stretch from the Levant to the Indus Valley, yet changes are slowly unfolding. The Kassites introduce new deities into the Babylonian pantheon, though they never replace Marduk. They also decentralize some elements of governance, granting land to loyal officials and temple estates practices that will later strain the kingdom's finances. By around 1400 BCE, Kassite Babylon enjoys relative peace. But this calm, like the soft surface of a slow-moving river, conceals undercurrents of instability. To the north, Assyria is rising once again. To the west, the Hittites flex their power. And far away in Egypt, a new dynasty watches the Near East with interest. While the Kassites maintain careful diplomacy, their ability to project military strength begins to wane. By the 13th century BCE, Babylon becomes increasingly dependent on alliances to maintain its sovereignty. It remains a respected kingdom, but no longer a dominant empire. Its fate becomes tied to larger regional dynamics. And then, toward the end of the 12th century BCE, the world changes dramatically. This is the time of the Bronze Age collapse, a widespread and mysterious disruption that affects nearly every major civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean and Near East. Cities are burned. Trade networks dissolve. Empires crumble. In this age of chaos, the Kassite dynasty too falls. Invasion from the Elamites again deals the final blow. In the 1150s BCE, Elamite armies sweep into Babylonia, destroy cities, and carry off sacred treasures, including once more the statue of Marduk. The Kassite dynasty, weakened and fragmented, disappears into history. And yet, Babylon lives on. It has endured conquest, collapse, and humiliation before, and it will rise again. Just as the Euphrates continues to flow, so too does the Babylonian spirit, resilient, adaptive, eternal. As we prepare to enter the next chapter, let us pause to reflect on this pattern of rise and fall, of brightness followed by dusk. The Kassites were not conquerors, but stewards preserving what could be preserved, adapting where they must. Their legacy is quieter than Hammurabi's, but no less essential. Let your mind rest now on the long, calm decades of Kassite rule, the quiet hum of temple chants, the shuffle of scribes in shaded courtyards, the scent of fresh clay and incense in the halls of kings. Babylon slumbers, but it is not gone. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. The stars above ancient Dur-Kurigalzu shine still, and the story of Babylon continues. The sun rises once more over Babylon, and with it, a new age begins. After centuries of obscurity, decline, and foreign domination, Babylon re-emerges in glorious light, Phoenix reborn from the ashes. This is the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and its most dazzling chapter unfolds under the rule of its greatest king, Nebuchadnezzar II. To reach this moment, we must pass through a turbulent time. After the fall of the Kassite dynasty in the 12th century BCE, Babylon changes hands many times. It is ruled by Elamites, Assyrians, Arameans, and local dynasties in a patchwork of control. The once great city is often caught in the shadows of rising powers, especially Assyria, which dominates Mesopotamia with brutal efficiency. For a time, Babylon becomes a vassal to Assyria. Its temples are restored, but its autonomy is limited. Yet through all this, Babylonian culture endures. Its language, laws, and legacy remain intact, even admired by the very empires that rule it. Then, in the late 7th century BCE, the world begins to shift again. Assyria, after centuries of military might, begins to falter. Its capital, Nineveh, is sacked in 612 BCE by a powerful alliance between Medes from the Iranian plateau and Babylonians under the command of a man named Nabopolassar. Nabopolassar, a Chaldean leader, seizes the moment. he establishes a new Babylonian dynasty and declares independence from Assyrian control. His military campaigns are bold, and by 609 BCE, Assyria is no more. Babylon, once again, is the heart of a powerful empire. It is his son, however, Nebuchadnezzar II, who takes the throne in 605 BC. Eho brings Babylon to its true height. Nebuchadnezzar rules for over 4 decades, and in that time, he transforms his city into one of the most magnificent urban centers the world has ever seen. Let us begin by walking through his Babylon. Imagine the Euphrates splitting the city in two, with great bridges and canals connecting its quarters. Massive defensive walls encircle the city, so wide that 2 chariots can race side by side along their tops. At the heart of it all stands the majestic Ishtar Gate, its surface glazed in brilliant blues and adorned with golden lions, bulls, and dragon symbols of strength, protection, and divine favor. Passing through the Ishtar Gate, we enter the processional way, a grand avenue lined with lions and stone slabs. During religious festivals, statues of the gods are paraded along this route, accompanied by music, offerings, and prayers. In the center of Babylon rises the great temple complex of Esagila, dedicated to Marduk, now recognized as the supreme god of the Babylonian pantheon. Towering above the temple is the Ziggurat Etemenenkimianing, House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. Some believe it inspired later legends of the Tower of Babel. It is here that Nebuchadnezzar invests heavily, not just in military conquest, but in urban and spiritual renewal. His inscriptions speak of rebuilding temples, restoring canals, and beautifying the land to honor Marduk. But his fame does not rest on architecture alone. Nebuchadnezzar is a formidable general. Early in his reign, he defeats the Egyptians at the Battle of Carchemish, securing Babylon's control over Syria and the Levant. His armies sweep through the ancient lands of Judah, Phoenicia, and beyond. In 586 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar besieges Jerusalem. The city falls, the Temple of Solomon is destroyed, and many of its inhabitants are exiled to Babylonia, moment remembered in biblical tradition as the Babylonian captivity. While this exile is a tragic event in Jewish history, it also fosters profound cultural exchange. In Babylon, Jewish scholars compose and preserve sacred texts, influenced by Mesopotamian scholarship, myths, and legal traditions. Babylon becomes not only a center of conquest, but of learning. And here we must pause to consider the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Though their exact location and even their existence remain debated, ancient sources, especially Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus, describe a marvel of engineering. Terraced gardens filled with exotic plants, watered by mechanical systems that defy gravity. Some say Nebuchadnezzar built them for his Median wife, who longed for the green mountains of her homeland. Whether fact or fable, the image lingers, symbol of beauty, love, and ingenuity amidst the dry Mesopotamian plain. Back in daily life, Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar is a city of scholars, merchants, priests, and artisans. Astronomers observe the stars from temple rooftops, recording celestial movements that will later influence Greek and Islamic science. Scribes preserve and copy ancient texts, legal codes, hymns, prayers, dictionaries, even mathematical treatises using advanced base 60 notation. Imagine a quiet evening in Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. The sky darkens to a velvety indigo. The air smells of frankincense and clay. From the ziggurat summit, priests chart the rising of Venus. Below, the city hums with quiet energy markets closing, prayers murmured, lamps lit in narrow alleyways. But as with all empires, twilight is never far away. After Nebuchadnezzar's death in 562 BCE, the Neo-Babylonian Empire struggles with instability. His successors are weaker, their reigns shorter. Intrigue grows at court. In 556 BCE, Nabonidus seizes power, a curious and eccentric king. Nabonidus is a devout worshipper of Sin, the moon god, which unsettles the priesthood of Marduk. He departs the capital for a decade-long stay in the Arabian oasis of Tema, leaving his son, Belshazzar, to rule in his absence. This vacuum of leadership, coupled with religious tension and growing discontent, weakens the empire from within. Meanwhile, a new power is rising to the east, the Persian Empire, under Cyrus the Great. In 539 BCE, Cyrus marches on Babylon. The city falls without significant resistance. Some say the gates are opened by sympathizers. Others describe a night attack along the riverbanks. Regardless of the details, Babylon becomes part of a new empire, the Achaemenid Persian realm. And yet, Cyrus does something remarkable. He honors Babylonian customs. He restores temples, including Esagila. He allows exiled peoples like the Jews to return to their homelands. He proclaims his policies on the Cyrus cylinder, a clay artifact often called the first declaration of human rights. So Babylon, though conquered, is not destroyed. It remains a jewel in the Persian crown, its legacy still honored. As we bring this chapter to a close, picture the city in its final golden light. The Ishtar Gate glows in the late afternoon sun. Pilgrims gather at the foot of Etemenanki. The markets buzz with traders from across the empire, Persians, Egyptians, Phoenicians, Greeks. Scholars pore over star charts. Scribes etch sacred hymns. Life, as always, flows on. Let your breathing slow now. The noise of conquest fades into the distance. The city remains, vast and vivid in memory, its walls echoing with centuries of prayer and promise. Babylon has risen again, but soon, in the next chapter, we will witness its final decline and transformation into legend. Sleep softly now. The stars over the hanging gardens shimmer still. As we drift gently past the grandeur of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, the shadows lengthen. Though the city remains proud and populous, a quiet transformation has begun. Its days as the beating heart of a sovereign empire are drawing to a close. Yet even in its fall, Babylon will not vanish. It will become a vessel of continuity, its cultural flame passed on like a sacred torch. We begin in the year 539 BCE. The Persian king Cyrus the Great, founder of the vast Achaemenid Empire, approaches Babylon. His conquests have already stretched from Anatolia to Central Asia, and now the jewel of Mesopotamia lies in his path. Cyrus does not approach as a mere invader. He presents himself as a liberator chosen by Marduk, the god of Babylon, to restore proper order. Babylon is weary. Its ruler, Nabonidus, has alienated the powerful priesthood by neglecting Marduk's worship in favor of Sin, the moon god. His long absence from the city during his decade-long retreat to Tema has weakened his authority. As Cyrus's army draws near, Babylon does not resist. According to the Nabonidus Chronicle, part of the Babylonian cuneiform record, the city is taken without battle. Some accounts suggest the Persians cleverly diverted the Euphrates River, allowing soldiers to enter the city through its drained canals. Others hint at collaboration from within. What matters more than how Babylon fell is what happened afterward. Cyrus, now master of the city, enters not as a destroyer, but as a respectful successor. He honors the traditions of Babylonian kingship. He restores the worship of Marduk. He allows exiled peoples, including the Jews, to return to their homelands and act commemorated in the Hebrew Bible and on the Cyrus cylinder. This clay cylinder, written in Akkadian cuneiform, presents Cyrus as chosen by Marduk to rule with justice. It speaks of rebuilding temples and returning divine statues to their sanctuaries. Today, it is seen by many as one of the earliest declarations of religious and cultural tolerance. Under Persian rule, Babylon thrives as a regional capital. It is integrated into a vast, multicultural empire stretching from India to Egypt. Satraps' governors administer the province. Trade flows freely along the Royal Road and Persian Gulf. Babylonian astronomers continue to record the stars, and scribes continue to write in cuneiform, preserving centuries of knowledge. Yet the city's independence is gone. The Achaemenids respect its traditions, but the center of imperial power shifts eastward to Persepolis, Susa, and Ecbatana. Babylon becomes one great city among many. Still, it remains a city of wonder. Even after the conquest, Greek travelers and historians are awestruck by what they see. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, describes Babylon as a marvel its size, its walls, its wealth. Though some of his accounts are exaggerated, they reflect the awe that Babylon inspired. But time moves on. In 331 BCE, another conqueror arrives. Alexander the Great. Fresh from his victories over the Persian Empire, Alexander enters Babylon not as an enemy, but as a hero. The city welcomes him. He offers sacrifices to Marduk. He plans to make Babylon a capital of his new empire. He begins renovations and draws up plans for new harbors, temples, and palaces. But fate intervenes. In 323 BCE, at the age of just 32, Alexander falls ill and dies in Babylon. His death plunges the empire into chaos. His generals known as the Diadochi fight for control. Babylon, caught in the conflict, begins to decline. Control of the region passes from one Hellenistic dynasty to another. The Seleucids, descendants of Alexander's general Seleucus, found a new city, Seleucia on the Tigris, just a few dozen miles north. It draws population and commerce away from Babylon. Over the next few centuries, Babylon fades. Its temples are abandoned. The canals clog with silt. The scribes who once filled thousands of tablets leave their script unread. By the 1st century CE, Babylon is largely in ruins, and yet its legacy endures. Babylonian science and mathematics influenced the Greeks, and through them, the Roman and Islamic worlds. Babylonian astrology becomes the foundation of later celestial studies. Their base 60 system survives today in how we measure time: 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. The Bible preserves Babylon's memory as a symbol of exile, excess, and judgment. The Book of Revelation speaks of Babylon the Great as the archetype of corruption and divine wrath. Yet this is a symbolic Babylona metaphor shaped by centuries of storytelling. For the Babylonians themselves, their memory persisted longer than their political power. Even into the Parthian and Sasanian periods, a small Babylonian community survived. Jewish academies flourished in nearby towns like Sura and Pumbedita, keeping alive the spiritual and scholarly legacy of Babylon in what would become the Babylonian Talmud, a cornerstone of rabbinic Judaism. Archaeologically, Babylon lay buried until the 19th and 20th centuries, when excavators unearthed its walls, its temples, and its cuneiform tablets. The past, long silent, began to speak again. In modern times, Babylon's image has shifted again from cursed city to cultural icon. Its ruins lie near Hilla in modern-day Iraq. Though damaged by time, politics, and war, they remain a testament to the city's enduring presence in human imagination. Today, when we speak of Babylon, we speak of law and empire, of ziggurats and gardens, of gods and stars. We speak of a civilization that stretched across centuries, falling and rising, always leaving behind something of itself in those who came after. Let your thoughts settle now on the slow twilight of Babylon. Imagine the golden bricks of Etamananke glowing in the dusk. Hear the soft shuffle of a scribe writing one last tablet. Smell the frankincense burning in a half-forgotten shrine. The empire is gone, but its story lingers. As we move toward our final chapter, we turn from fall to reflection, from what was to what remains. Babylon is not dead. It lives in memory, in language, in law, and in dream. Sleep now, and let the ancient winds of the Euphrates carry you gently forward. As we enter the final stretch of our journey, the empire has faded, the temples have crumbled, and the bustling streets have fallen silent. Yet Babylon's story is not confined to ruins. Like the soft echo of a lyre in the evening breeze, its presence lingers, haunting, enduring, mysterious. Babylon is more than a city. It is an idea, a symbol, a legend passed down through millennia. Its legacy lies not just in stone or clay, but in the minds of those who remembered it, feared it, revered it. Even after its decline, Babylon was never forgotten. To the Greeks, it was a place of wonder, a monument to what humans could build. The historian Strabo wrote of its great walls, of its temples and hanging gardens. Though by his time the city had diminished, its name still carried weight. In the Jewish and Christian traditions, Babylon became a powerful symbol. In the book of Daniel, the city is the stage for dreams and revelations. In Psalm 137, we hear the longing of exiles. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and wept. And in the book of Revelation, Babylon becomes an allegory for worldly corruption, a great harlot, who falls under divine judgment. This image of Babylon as a place of temptation and ruin took hold in the medieval imagination. To live in Babylon meant to live in moral danger, yet even as it was condemned, it was never dismissed. Its magnificence haunted the hearts of those who heard its name. Islamic scholars, too, remembered Babylon. They preserved its scientific achievements, its astronomy, its mathematics, its medicine. They wrote of its sages and magi, of its ziggurats reaching into the heavens. In this way, Babylon contributed to the golden age of Islamic civilization, its ancient knowledge flowing eastward into Persia and beyond. By the time European explorers and archaeologists turned their eyes to Mesopotamia in the 19th century, Babylon had become a word wrapped in myth. It was both real and unreal, half remembered, half imagined. But then, slowly, it re-emerged from the sands. Archaeologists like Robert Coldaway began to unearth its foundations. Brick by brick, inscription by inscription, the lost city was revealed. The Ishtar Gate, reconstructed in Berlin, dazzled the world with its blue-glazed bricks and striding lions. The thousands of cuneiform tablets uncovered brought forth voices that had been silent for over 2,000 years. From these discoveries, a fuller picture emerged. Babylon was no longer just a biblical cautionary tale. It was a city of law and language, of bureaucracy and belief, of science and spectacle. Its memory lives on in the very words we use. The term Babel, denoting confusion of languages, traces back to Babylon. The Babylonian influence on early Hebrew culture remains visible in the Babylonian Talmud, one of the foundational texts of Judaism. Even our understanding of time bears Babylon's imprint. Their base 60 systems exegesimal gave us the 60-minute hour, the 360-degree circle. Their celestial observations influenced the study of astronomy, guiding the motions of calendars and the shaping of horoscopes. Culturally, Babylon lives in art, music, and literature. Painters have imagined its gardens, poets have sung of its exiles, historians have tried to separate the real from the legendary. In popular culture, Babylon appears in novels, video games, films, and songs. It is used to evoke mystery, grandeur, or excess. Sometimes misunderstood, sometimes romanticized, always unforgettable. In modern Iraq, the site of Babylon continues to inspire interest and debate. Efforts have been made to preserve the ruins, though they have faced damage from war, construction, and time. Yet the ruins endure, resting beside the slow current of the Euphrates. Pilgrims of history still visit, drawn by the resonance of a name that echoes through the ages. In 2019, UNESCO declared Babylon a World Heritage Site, recognizing its value to all humanity. It was an act not only of preservation, but of remembrance and acknowledgement that Babylon, though long fallen, still belongs to us all. So what, in the quiet of night, are we to make of Babylon? It was a city of immense contradictions, sacred and profane, wise and ruthless, ordered and chaotic. It created laws to bind the strong and protect the weak, and it built towers to brush the feet of heaven. It raised gardens for queens and temples for gods. It was built by kings, governed by scribes, guarded by warriors, and sung by poets. It reminds us that empires are mortal, but ideas are not. Babylon fell, yes, many times, to the Assyrians, to the Persians, to time itself. But it rose again, each time not in stone, but in spirit. It rose in Hammurabi's code, which echoes in modern law. It rose in the observatories of ancient scholars, measuring the stars. It rose in the longing of exiles who dreamed of returning home. And it rose in every whispered bedtime story that began, long ago, in the land between two rivers. So now, let us rest. Let your mind wander across ancient brick roads, beneath the shadow of ziggurats, past clay tablets and perfumed gardens. Let Babylon settle in your thoughts, not as a place of destruction, but as a place of learning, of striving, of becoming. For in the quiet heart of the night, history becomes more than names and dates. It becomes a lullaby, a song of where we've been and who we are. And Babylon eternal, mythical, remembered, is part of that song. Sleep now, traveler of time. The story is complete. The river flows on. The stars still turn. And Babylon waits in dreams.